Well, good evening. This is Howlog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening. And here is an interesting article on Zero Hedge. Top IMF official, global recovery could take years to return to 2019 levels. A handful of NGOs have debunked the recovery narrative that has been touted as a V in the financial media, and some economists, notably those who work for the Trump administration and to a lesser degree central banks. Now, the number 2 official at the International Monetary Fund has become the latest to declare that the global economy could take years to heal, and that it could take a long time before we return to 2019 levels, reported Reuters. First Deputy Managing Director Jeffrey Okamoto said during an online event hosted by the Centre for Strategic and International Studies that the IMF is trying to preserve our financial firepower for more instabilities that may be ahead. Okamoto said, "We're talking about a return to growth that's going to take a few years, and many countries along the way are probably going to need assistance." I'm sure they're just rubbing their hands together about that little fact. The fund has distributed up to $90 billion in total financing to 79 countries, including 20 in Latin America, since the outbreak emerged earlier this year, an IMF spokeswoman said. Latin American and the Caribbean nations have seen their economies crushed by the outbreak-induced downturn, along with reporting a surge in CV cases and deaths. Okamoto said IMF officials were in discussions with the G20 countries to extend a temporary halt in official bilateral debt service payments by low-income countries under the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI. And you know, when you see these natty little sayings that they have, Debt Service Suspension Initiative, that there's just trouble, all kinds of trouble behind that title. And how to kickstart private sector participation, reported Reuters. And we all know what that means is that the private sector will take advantage of the cheap labour and then extract the profits from these poor countries. And that's why we have terrorism, my friends. That's why we have so much trouble in the world today, because this is the way the elite do business. The number 2 IMF official also said others within the fund were worried about the debt sustainability of heavily indebted emerging market economies, such as Latin American countries, because of their pre-existing high debt levels before the outbreak-induced downturn. Okamoto called on wealthy developed countries such as the US, who is also the largest shareholder of the fund, to contribute more and aid emerging countries. Well, I believe that US is now the most indebted country in the world, so how much deeper in their pocket can the US dig? I mean, really, this is there's so much trouble in the world today. Who is going to be, everyone is in debt. Who is going to pay for all of this stuff? Where is that money going to come from? And it's not just the IMF signaling the global recovery could take more time than initially anticipated. The World Bank was out with a warning last week that a full recovery could take upwards of 5 years. There will probably be a quick rebound as all the restriction measures linked to lockdowns are lifted, but a full recovery will take as much as 5 years, Chief Economist of the World Bank, Carmen Reinhart, warned Thursday, September the 17th. Meanwhile, St. Louis President James Bullard was out Thursday touting the US economic recovery is within reach or nearly fully recovered by year end. Here's what David Rosenberg, chief economist and strategist of Rosenberg Research, had to say about that. Jim Bullard says a full economic recovery is possible by year end. When he gets asked what happened when we get a fourth quarter relapse, instead he'll merely say, "I only said possible." As Gary Shilling, the president of A. Gary Shilling and Company, said in early July, investors have missed the shape of the recovery, and that could have profound implications for markets looking ahead into quarter 4. And yes, you can see it's a slippery slope downhill. And although it has recovered somewhat, boy oh boy oh boy, that is not what you call a healthy chart. And there you go. As I said before, this is going to be a long road to recovery. I don't think people quite understand the depth and the breadth of the damage that has been done to our economy. Firstly, by globalism itself and the just-in-time service and the interconnectedness of all trade, that we are now completely dependent on other countries for critically manufactured goods. And of course we can see what a dangerous position that puts you in should you reach a hiccup or a bump in the road. And so that has to be resolved. We have to decide how we're going to deal with that, where manufacturing is going to take place, and we're going to reevaluate what it is that is important and what we need. And that is going to take a long time. So this is not unlike Russia, when communism finally collapsed, and the 10-year long climb out of that hole because nobody knew what that new system looked like. All they had experience of was the old system that had gone on for 70 or 80 years, and so it was a long readjustment period, and that's what we're looking at right here. It's hard to believe that such a small event and such a small thing as a virus could have such a staggeringly wide, broad and deep effect on the world and the world's economy. And really the problem more lies with the system that we had adopted, the globalist just-in-time system, than the actual effect of the virus, because it's globalism that left us vulnerable in this situation. And that is what we should abandon, and we should reinstate a much more sustainable and localized kind of economy. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this article, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hammock C signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. Bye.